Welcome back to New Rockstars. I'm Erik Voss, and this is a breakdown of The Last of Us Episode 3, Long Time. This emotional episode titled after the 1970 Linda Ronstadt song that breaks our hearts again, and hopefully now gets the Stranger Things running up that hill treatment. I'm gonna break down why this song was especially perfect, giving Frank's song code, and just so many other interesting details that you might have missed from this episode. It's exactly the kind of thing that I love to break down, because it's not like we're looking for Easter eggs, it's just like little interesting choices in the writing and the acting and the directing that make this such a rewarding storytelling experience. And thank you to Baksu for sponsoring this video. More on their tasty offerings later. And a reminder to please subscribe to New Rockstars' new channel, The Deep Dive, launching February 17th, because if you'd like me breaking down more intimate stories to deeper themes beyond comic books and video game Easter eggs, I got an emotional wallop coming your way with the deep dive of everything everywhere all at once. Okay, last episode of The Last of Us started and ended with an oral transmission of the cordyceps fungus, a kiss of death for Tess that serves as a grim reflection of the writer's theme of the danger of love, and the opening credits echo that, with a vision of a human face, mouth open, formed by this fungus. Joel's knuckles are still bloody from beating that soldier in episode 1, despite him telling Tess at the top of last episode that it would heal quickly. We see him stacking rocks, which some hikers do to mark trails, some to practice mindfulness, but is also some ancient culture's way of marking graves. So right now, this is the best Joel can really do to give Tess a funeral, because Joel and Ellie are still not really able to communicate about it.
Look, I've been thinking about...
I don't want your sorries.
I wasn't gonna say I'm sorry. I was gonna say that I've been thinking about what happened. Nobody made you or Tess take me.
Yeah, it's interesting how Joel doesn't really know Ellie as well as he assumes he does. Ellie actually looked way more pissed off at Joel. She's blaming him for Tess's death. Ellie asks about the scar on Joel's head.
Someone shot at me and missed.
See, that's cool. Shoot back?
Yeah.
You get him?
No, I missed too. It happens more often than you think.
Now, actually, in the game, Joel has a scar on the bridge of his nose, which is a very subtle detail from the night Sarah was shot. He doesn't have a scar on his nose before, but he actually incurs this injury during this attack. He has to carry this reminder of his daughter's death with him on his face from here forward. But in the show, I assume this scar on his cheek is from some other incident. He definitely didn't have it in that 2010 garden party that they had with Bill and Frank. So the sign in front of the Cumberland Farms has had a few letters dropped, and I want to say the top word was children, and then beneath, something about rations, maybe? I don't know, maybe with the panic over flour, rations were only given to families with children in those few days. Inside, Ellie finds a Mortal Kombat 2 game box.
You ever play this one? I had a friend who knew everything about this game. There's this one character named Melina who takes off her mask and she has monster teeth and then she swallows you whole and barfs out your bones.
She's referring to Melina's fatality move, which of course was the kiss of death. A kiss of death is also how the cordyceps is transmitted. Ellie asks,
Is there anything bad in here?
Just you.
Getting funnier.
yeah, Joel's making a callback to last episode in the supercuts.
There's not gonna be anything bad in here?
Just you.
Oh, funny.
It's a bit of a dad joke, but it's also a lesson from Joel. The natural threats we face are unfeeling and amoral. It's only really humanity that has the capacity for evil. Ellie finds a box of tampons and this half-buried stalker. Now, just a reminder, runners are the early stages of the infected. Stalkers are the half-mushroom-headed who are under a year of infected, and then beyond that are the clickers. They're the blind, fully covered heads who are over a year of being infected. We will meet stages beyond that as we go. But I love this shot, this close-up. We can really see the prosthetic makeup from Pat Fode, who also worked on Chernobyl, House of the Dragon, and Stranger Things. It just makes this fungal outgrowth look even more vivid than the clickers are from a distance. This is gross, but you can see beads of pus on the cheek, and then chunks of flesh on the stalks that are growing out of the head. That yellow infected eye continues to follow Ellie's knife, so for now the fungus is still puppeting the host optic nerve. But Ellie is testing to see if there is a soul inside, recalling her question last week to Joel.
Was it hard? Like knowing they were people once?
Sometimes.
Joel stashes his rifle.
Not much ammo out there for this thing. Makes it mostly useless.
Well, if you're just gonna leave it there.
No.
Solid practical logic here. As in the gameplay, if your weapon runs out of ammo, it's useless.
It's out of ammo!
And for Joel's case here, it would be extra weight and something he could lose that might be weaponized against him in the future. Ellie asks how the infection started.
How did it even start? If you have to get bit to be infected, then who bit the first person? Was it a monkey? I bet it was a monkey.
Yeah, I love this because it's kind of a reference to the movie 28 Days Later, where the outbreak came from infected chimps, and that movie came out in June 2003 and would have been the most recent major zombie movie before Outbreak Day. So naturally, there would be some monkey theory that would have made it into the urban myths that Ellie knows. And Joel further confirms the flower theory that I discussed back in week 1.
Some of it got into the food supply. Probably a basic ingredient like flour, sugar, bread, cereal, pancake mix.
Now, I thought Joel was joking around about being on Atkins, but if he really was avoiding carbs, that would explain why he didn't get infected. And yes, that pause on pancake mix, Joel was remembering Sarah trying to make him pancakes on his birthday. They pass a mass grave of people that Fedra force evac'd and then killed when there wasn't enough room in a QZ. And we linger on the remains of a parent and their child, framed with Joel, the parent figure, with Ellie, the child figure, in the background. Now, this is incredibly morbid, but artistically, I really appreciate the transition on the clothes this family was last wearing, flashing back 20 years earlier. This mass grave is a fate far worse than any of the infected, if you ask me, who one could argue were overtaken by nature to grow into something monstrous, but also somewhat beautiful. Meet Bill, Nick Offerman, who watches all this going down from his survivalist basement.
Not today, you New World Order jackboot fucks.
New World Order was a globalist conspiracy theory that grew in popularity during the 90s and early 2000s, an idea that someone like Bill would totally ascribe to. Bill's computer uses Windows 2000, even though Windows XP would have totally been around in 2003. Just makes sense that Bill wouldn't want to upgrade the OS because that's how they track you. Also, his Guns and Ammo magazine is actually the issue from earlier the year, February 2003. The Fedra evac notice was put in front of the town's Civil War memorial statue of Abraham Lincoln, another example of how all of US history, all of human history, was overshadowed by this apocalyptic event. Bill's bunker includes guns, gun magazines, sulfuric acid, and the like, but as he rises to the ground level, right away, we see a surprisingly stocked wine rack. Just an early sign that Bill has somewhat more cultured taste than you'd expect from a stereotypical survivalist. At the gas station, Bill punches the highest grade of fuel because who cares? Though notice it still only brings up to $1.19 per gallon. Oh my god, 2003. He loots a Home Depot, a scene that feels like the reason Nick Offerman was cast in this role after he played Ron Swanson on Parks and Rec.
Hi there. Is there a project you're working on?
I know more than you.
All right.
But while Ron probably would have looted some scotch from the liquor store, Bill loots some Camus Cabernet from Napa Valley. This town has a white church in the background, which in the games is where Bill holes up as his home. But in the show, he stays in the house. This episode gives Bill and Frank a happier relationship, unlike the game, where by the time Joel and Ellie catch up with Bill, Frank is already dead and it was implied they ended on bitter terms. Had the show versions of Bill and Frank follow that path, maybe Bill would have continued to follow his more paranoid tendencies and ended up in the church. 4 years after this, Bill listens to Cream's White Room, which is a song about an empty apartment, because despite Bill building this fortress, his home is still empty. Bill's basement has some banners up: "Don't tread on me," "Join or die." Join or die was Benjamin Franklin's political cartoon encouraging the American colonies to unite against the British, which is ironic for a loner like Bill, but exactly the mindset he'll be following by joining with Frank. You can either connect with another human or die alone. Now notice that Bill is actually welding something. This is the modded buzzsaw with a pipe that we later see in action when the raiders attack. The buzzsaw releases the sparks, and then those sparks ignite the gas that blows out the pipe to produce the flamethrower. As Bill goes to check the hole that Frank fell into, the control box for the electric fence has been fused to speed limit signs. Just like how Bill has taken everything and repurposed it into something else. But important detail here, notice 4 years after setting up this fence, vines are starting to grow in the barbed wire. Just a few years in, and nature is already starting to make it difficult to maintain security. Bill checks to see if Frank is infected.
How'd you get that?
Yeah, a really good question that this episode doesn't answer. This is a Fedra invention that they wouldn't have invented until at least sometime into the pandemic, meaning Bill would have either had to have killed a Fedra soldier to do this, or found it among some dead Fedra soldiers on some raid far beyond Lincoln. I think Bill might have had to kill someone. So Frank is played by Murray Bartlet, who you might know as Armand, the concierge from White Lotus Season 1, and Bill tells him,
If I feed you, then every bum you talk to about it is gonna show up here looking for a free lunch. And this is not an Arby's.
Well, Arby's didn't have free lunch, it was a restaurant.
I think this hilarious response is the moment that Bill realizes Frank is smart and he at least likes him. Now notice how Frank runs his finger through the dust on Bill's mantle, discovering a purpose for himself here in this home. When Bill enters with the meals, his eyes immediately dart over to that mantle. He's acutely aware of the very first different detail of this room that he's entered every day for the past 3 years, and for the first time in this pandemic, he is feeling self-conscious. Bill serves Frank this amazing meal on fine china. He uses chargers.
A man who knows to pair rabbit with a Beaujolais.
I know I don't seem like the type.
No, you do.
Yes, Frank is letting Bill know that he sees him, and it's okay. So on the piano, Frank plays Linda Ronstadt's Long, Long Time, but he plays too fast, maybe intentionally, to bait Bill into playing it correctly? I don't know. I just love this as a way of showing how Frank moves fast. He is Frank. He gets right to it, whereas Bill wants to take things slow. Both these men are romantics, just moving at different speeds, and fortunately, have been able to find each other here at the end of the world.
And I think I'm gonna love you
Now, the speaker of the song is tired of everyone telling them that they'll find love eventually, and they just accept the fate of loving someone who will never love them back and having to live with the wounds of heartbreak. Now, it is 2007 in this scene, but Massachusetts back in September 2003 on Outbreak Day would have been just 2 months before the Massachusetts Supreme Court ruled that the state was required to legalize same-sex marriage, leading Massachusetts to become the first US state to recognize gay marriage in the following May in 2004. So on Outbreak Day, Bill was right on the cusp of being able to live closer to the way that he wanted to. Long, Long Time is a 1970s song performed by Linda Ronstadt, but the words were written by Gary White, whom Ronstadt saw at a show in 1969. So, going by Frank's radio code, this song was written by a musician in the decade of the 60s, the 60s decade meaning nothing is in, but when the song's words were paired with and immortalized by just the right voice, that of Linda Ronstadt, it became a 70s song, and the 70s decade means new stock. So Linda and Frank were the new stock. We actually learned later this episode that the code was Frank's idea.
Oh, and I had this idea that we should use codes for the radio in case anyone's listening.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Like, I was thinking, like, the decades, like 80s, trouble.
Look, you guys, The Last of Us, clearly a masterpiece, but we gotta admit, it's pretty grim. So let's just take a collective breather for a moment and cleanse our mental palate with a little snack break from Boxu. Boxu is a premium Japanese snack subscription that works with family businesses all over Japan to deliver a new theme of authentic Japanese snacks every month. Beyond the tasty treats, each Boxu comes with a booklet that teaches you all about the theme, where the snacks come from, and it even teaches you a few Japanese words and phrases. Your first box's theme will be Seasons of Japan, and then after that, you'll get new themed boxes every month like this one. This month's theme is Shinshun New Year. And we learned that New Year's, or Shinshun, is a festive and food-filled time in Japan. Families munch on toshikoshi soba on New Year's Eve, visit shrines, and even make mochi. And I've made no secret how I love mochi. Let's give it a try. I love mochi. It's so sweet. It's just so soft on my teeth. Oh, man. And the nice thing about Boxu is that when you really fall in love with a snack like I just did, you can stock up on your favorites through Boxu Boutique. Both I and the new Rockstars office have been receiving these boxes for ages. We love them. And so if you want to try some of these unique snacks with us and support the channel, just click that link in the description and use code NEWROCKSTARS to get $15 off your order. So after they kiss, Frank asks,
What's your name?
and it's just so sweet that Frank sheds a tear here, as this is such an emotional catharsis for both these men. Neither of them thought they'd ever have a chance like this. And it's just great that he loves this man so much despite not even knowing his name, because Bill never told him his name. So we jump cut from their sex to...
Oh, you. Come on.
Yeah, this is the Bill and Frank players of the game expected. As I said, in the game, Frank gets sick of Bill's paranoia and leaves him. He actually tries to leave the town of Lincoln, but he gets swarmed by infected, he gets bitten, and he hangs himself, leaving a suicide note for Bill telling him that he'd rather be dead than spend another day with him. So since they clearly had a lot of bad days in the game, it's good that we get to see at least one bad day here. They're fighting because Frank wants to tidy up the whole neighborhood, so that they're not just surviving, they're actually living.
Paying attention to things. It's how we show love. This is my street too. Just let me love it the way I want to.
Remember, Frank had Bill take a shower before they made love, and Frank will repeat this definition of love to Bill when they're old men.
Do you love me?
Yes.
Then love me the way I want you to.
So they host this wonderful garden party with Joule and Tess, and now you can see that their yard has been mowed and all the surrounding houses have been painted with flags raised. It feels like a regular neighborhood. The two grunters of the pair talk to each other.
I understand. If mine brought strangers into our situation, I wouldn't be happy either.
Yeah, it's so sad. Joel never identified what Tess was to him, but even Bill tracked that because this comes back later. Now in the game, Tess was the one who kept contact with Bill and Frank. Joel never went to the town, and he didn't even meet Bill until Ellie was with him. Joel notices that the fence needs repairing, and he promises to hook Bill up with some barbed wire.
Last you the rest of your lives.
Yeah, a little adjustment from Joel, indicating to Bill that he can see what he and Frank mean to each other, in case Bill was trying to hide it. And as Frank says, paying attention to things is how we show love. When the raiders attack at night, Frank wakes up to see the battle underway already. Bill didn't want to wake up Frank because he didn't want him to join him in the shootout. One wonders how many nights Bill might have kept watch outside while Frank slept. Bill only gets shot when he turns around to tell Frank to go back inside, and he gets hit in the lower back but bleeds out the front, meaning that was the exit wound and there's no bullet to remove, fortunately. unfortunately. Time jumps ahead again to the end of their lives in 2023. Notice the neighboring houses aren't as nice anymore because both men are older, especially Frank, who would have been one of the two spending more time to clean everything up, and now he's in the wheelchair. We see Frank's paintings, including one of Joule in his brown jacket. Now remember, Bill and Frank's first meal at the dining table had them at opposite ends of the table, but now they sit right next to each other, an inverse of the famous marriage montage in Citizen Kane, where Kane and his wife sit farther and farther away from each other over time. Also in their bedroom, there's a lovely painting of Bill adorning the wall on his side of the bed, but on the next morning, there's a momentarily scary jump cut to Bill waking up with Frank out of focus in the wheelchair in the background. It reminds us of Ms. Adler back in the first episode. Is Frank infected? Oh god, but no, it's fine. But this is Frank's biggest fear, to become too old and too frail to stop the cordyceps from finding his way to him. Frank has terminal cancer now, and so he wants his life to end. And he says,
I'm not going to give you the every day was a wonderful gift from God speech. I've had a lot of bad days. I've had bad days with you, too. But I've had more good days with you than with anyone else.
Yeah, again, I just love this change that we get to see them grow old together. Because it's not like in the game you ever see this couple together, you're just seeing how the relationship ended. But this adaptation invites us to imagine their mixed bag of a life together as half full instead of half empty, which is important. We need reasons to root for humanity's survival on this show. Their final sunset includes a shot of the hole where Bill first found Frank, followed by that strawberry plant from that really happy memory. They exchange wedding rings by the piano where they shared their first kiss, and Bill recreates the first meal he ever cooked for them, grilled rabbit, the same exact label of Beaujolais. He even rotates the plate the same way on the charger as he did before in the very first meal they had. Now we don't see him open the second bottle at the end of the meal, showing how Bill has already drugged it so that he will die too. Bill tells Frank,
This isn't the tragic suicide at the end of the play. I'm old. I'm satisfied. And you were my purpose.
Now, the tragic suicide at the end of the play is not a Romeo and Juliet reference. Craig Mazin is actually paying homage to Mark Crowley's 1968 play, The Boys in the Band, which has a very similar line. It's meant to dispel the stereotype that all gay love stories have to end in tragic suicides. That play's title is actually a nod to A Star is Born, which of course is another suicide ending. And they got the title from the scene where James Mason tells Judy Garland, "You're singing for yourself and the boys in the band." And as Bill wheels him off to bed, the candles stay lit. When Joel and Ellie arrive a few weeks later, you notice how that wax has melted down, meaning those candles continue to burn. The interior lights all remain on as well, because obviously they didn't ever turn them off. Also, dust has collected on the silverware, the house reverting back to its dusty state as it was when Frank first ran his finger along that mantle. Now, Joel tries to get into their bedroom, but the breeze slams the front door shut, distracting him and stopping him from forcing his way in. Some force was keeping Joel from disturbing the grave accidentally, but we later learn that force was Bill having left the window open. That's what caused the air pressure in the house to cause his draft to go through and pull the door shut to keep the grave a sacred place. In his letter, Bill has left Joel with some parting wisdom, and it's read by Ellie.
I used to hate the world, and I was happy when everyone died. But I was wrong. Because there was one person worth saving. That's why men like you and me are here. We have a job to do.
Yeah, Ellie stops before reading the end, but Joel grabs the letter, and if you look closely, you can see what he wrote. Use them to keep Tess safe. And if you and she decide you've something, I recommend pairing something. Yeah, he's ending this letter by saying he hopes Joel and Tess could finally confess their love to each other, and Bill left him with a wine pairing option, like what he used to woo Frank. It's so sad. Now, we learned that the reason the 80s music played was because it was automatically set to if it wasn't reset in a few weeks, and Ellie finds the gun that Frank kept in his writing desk. I wonder if this is a gun that Bill wasn't even aware of. Ellie wears this red shirt now. This is the same red shirt that Ellie is most often seen wearing in part 1 of the game, and I like how with this and the gun she carries, she is in a way symbolically activated as a sort of playable character, or at least at some point in the future will be playable. Joel has to teach Ellie what a seatbelt is because this is a girl who's blown away by the concept of airplanes. So yeah, a working truck must be like a spaceship to her. And Ellie plays a cassette of Linda Ronstadt's Long, Long Time, which is how we close the episode, as the camera retreats back through Bill and Frank's open bedroom window from their body's perspective as they watch them go. Now, this shot of the open window with the breeze brushing the curtains was actually an intentional nod to the menu screen of the game, the press any button screen. And the producers actually considered opening every episode with an open window, where HBO Max users could press play on a different window every episode to begin it. They ended up scrapping that idea, but we get that concept here with Frank's painting of Bill on the wall right above some dead flowers. And I just love that we leave Bill and Frank with the window window open so their souls are free to go. Had these two men not found each other, they both would have died alone in the darkness underground, like that underground infected that Ellie stabs this episode. Corpses overtaken by the fungus without souls. Frank would have been in the pit, Bill would have been in his bunker, where the only window was, Windows 2000. And so while this series as a whole is a statement of love's destructive power, indeed it did lead Bill to make Frank's suicide a double suicide, there remains an undeniable beauty to that destructive love. And the love that Bill was able to feel for Frank was so powerful that it inspires Joule to save Ellie. Hey, a reminder to subscribe to The Deep Dive and follow me on Instagram and Twitter at EA Voss. Follow New Rockstars and subscribe to New Rockstars for more analysis of everything you love. Thanks for watching. Bye.